What's going on, everyone? Happy 4th of July. We are out here by the Jeep and I am gonna go over my top mods that everyone always asks me about and how you can do them on your own Jeep. So let's go check it out. So probably the number one question I get asked about is how did I mount my roof rack so low? So to start it off, the actual basket itself is a modified Rola basket. When I first bought this thing, it was a little bit smaller than it is in its current configuration. But for you guys that want to run a basket, it does look really good and it is easily purchasable on Amazon or Summit. I think I originally bought it from Summit because I didn't want to wait. I wanted to go pick it up. But if you want a basket, Rolla is the way to go if you want to go that route. You look at mine is a little bit wider and longer than your standard Rola basket. So I cut this thing and basically extended it in all directions so I could fit more stuff up there. Plus, I think it looks a little bit more proportional on the Jeep. Had to make a custom wind deflector out of a piece of aluminum for this thing. And then I cut it out so the light bar up there would work. But the question I always get asked is, how does this thing sit so low? Well, I suggest getting yourself some YITAMOTOR brand crossbars if you don't already have some. I'm not sure if every crossbar out there you're able to remove the riser, but with these you can for sure remove the riser, so you won't have to question it. But if you happen to have some crossbars, go look for yourself and see if that riser underneath is removable. Now what I mean by the riser is the piece that sits in between the factory rail and the crossbars. And as you can see on mine, I don't have one. So on mine, the crossbar actually sits straight on the factory rail. And the way I did that was, without running that riser, is I have the piece of rubber up right now, is basically you're gonna undo the bolts inside that hold the riser on, completely take it out, and you will just be left with a crossbar, which you can see that runs across with a hole in it. And basically what you can do is remove the forwardmost and rearmost factory screws on these rails. It's an M6 screw that you're removing, and you are replacing it with an M6 by 1.0 thread pitch by 40 millimeter. And that will be the correct length for the extra distance that you need to replace the screw with, because normally the factory screws, as you can see, let's see, I got some other ones. There's one right there, sit down in the channel. So you need one that's gonna basically sit on top of this and be able to connect all the way down. So it needs to be longer. So M6 by 1 by 40 millimeter is your screw that you need. And I just went and got one of these Allen head type screws. The factory ones are a little star pattern. You can see, but just replace it with an Allen head button screw. And like I said, that's the forwardmost and rearmost screw that you're replacing. So one on each side for each rail. And that will get it sitting down low. Now a little disclaimer on this, bringing the rack down lower means you're going to get the little U-bolts, as you can see them, down a lot closer to the roof. Now with the wider setup I have, they're not as close to the center because the center of the roof basically curves over. But when I ran the smaller rack, I didn't have any issues. But you are probably not gonna wanna run the full amount of weight up there. So I have run a full-size spare up there, but my current setup with the Rotopax fuel jug and the water jug and the traction boards and the high lift, that's not all that heavy up there. It's just a lot of stuff, so it got it out of the cab. That's the reason I run a basket. Plus you can mount your lights on there. So if you're planning on running a rooftop tent or a bunch of storage like crates, whatever, you're probably not gonna run this setup because it's not going to be able to handle all that weight. I would suggest looking at something from Chief Products or Off-Road Animal, one of their full rooftop setups. Basically, that'll be able to handle a tent or extra gear or whatever. But if you are just wanting to run a basket with a few extra things up there, this is a really good setup. Running low, it also basically keeps wind noise down because you're getting it out of the flow of air, so it's not going to throw a bunch of noise out there when you're going on the highway. I actually don't get any wind noise with this setup. I've had it off and on and compared it, and it was the same. So good setup for you guys that just want to do something cheap. This setup's like less than 300 bucks. I think those crossbars, which I will put a link down in the description. Same with the Rola Basket for you guys that want to go pick one up. It's going to probably cost you either right at 300 or less than 300. I think the crossbars are like 90 bucks. The basket is, I forget how much it is, but it's going to be right around 300 bucks for this setup. The screws obviously don't cost very much. But for you guys that also want to know the mounts I run, I had to custom make some to work with this. Basically made some like clamp type mounts, which you can't really see them because I have them down, but I will hop up here. I just use some little discs, and then I have basically a nut welded on a plate on the back, and that's what's holding it on. Similar setup. You can kind of see down there. I have a little, basically a nut with some spacers and a piece of metal, and that kind of holds these down. High lift, those were actually the high lift mounts that work on the tube. And then for this one, I was lazy and didn't make any mounts, and I just used a piece of like a strap, and that'll work if you want to get something cheap that'll basically keep it up there. This is not going anywhere. This thing is not going anywhere. Same with this. Little tip for you guys that want to run one of these roto packs up here, you do have to burp them. And what I mean by burp them, you basically have to let the air, which this one actually needs burped right now, so I will show you if I can get it undone with one hand. You can see there's air in there, and basically what will happen is this thing will get air in there and it'll expand. And so basically you need to take these things off. I don't have any fuel in this one right now, and just let the temperature change and elevation change and whatnot makes these things expand and contract. That's one of the downsides to running something like this up there. But basically that is how you get that rack mounted lower. So super simple mod. I couldn't remember off the top of my head when I bought the screws what size they were, but now you guys will know they're an M6 by 1 by 40 screw, and I'll throw that up there just so you can remember it if you wanted to see it on a frame better, whatever. Next mod is basically the recovery points in the back. Now this is not something that your everyday person can do because I welded them on there. But for somebody that, if you know somebody that fabricates, welds, whatever, or you do that yourself, it's a really cool mod that will set your Grand Cherokee apart. The main reason I ever did this was basically to have something that no one else I have ever seen do. So basically this isn't something you have to have, because you can use your hitch as a recovery point, the center of it. But if you don't have a hitch or whatever, you can basically weld onto that factory bumper that's in the back, or if you're like me and you wanted to use the hitch as your recovery point mounts, you can do that. So I will throw some pictures up here when I first did this. These are welded onto the hitch tube, and I will show you pictures of that. And these are Gear America shackles. I had to cut the plastic valance out to fit them in there, and these are clevis mounts that I had to cut and fit to that. They are universal, so you have to do the work yourself and cut them and weld them on there. But it was a little bit of a job getting the right length and whatnot, but I think it came out pretty good. It sits really close. It looks factory. People always ask me what bumper this is. Well, it's the factory plastic valance that I cut. But they do make shackle mounts for the hitch. If you just want to put one in there, you can leave it in your bag if you need it. I just like the look of having the shackles on the back all the time. So simple if you know how to weld, but if you don't, it's going to probably cost you some money, but it will definitely set your Jeep apart. I've always loved how this thing looks with the shackles on the back. People are always asking me about it. So if you're wanting to do that, here you go. And the last mod that I'm going to go over in this video is basically what do you do to finish off the cuts you've made on your bumpers, and what product did you use? So I am going to throw a link in the description for the rubber channel that I use and show you guys. This is what it comes like. And the cool part about this is it has a little metal insert in this, so it forms to whatever you're putting it on. I know some other stuff out there I've tried is just straight rubber, and it does not work well for this application. So you can push this stuff, and I will show you, it just comes right off if you need it. The downside of something like this is once it fills with mud, it tends to want to come off. I've had to clean it out and kind of push it back up on there, but it fits on there, stays on there perfect. Never had an issue of it falling off unless it filled with mud. But I have this going all the way across my front bumper where I cut it, and I did the same in the back that you probably saw when I was back here a second ago. But I ran this all the way across the back, and this stuff holds up really, really well. So anywhere you want to make a cut, you can use this stuff. I think they make it in white. I like the black because it matched the trim and it looks like it was supposed to be there. You guys can judge for yourself. Easy way to keep the cut looking clean, because otherwise you're just going to be left with your cut bumper, which, you know, it doesn't look horrible, but I want it to look a little more finished, like it's supposed to be there. I also get people asking me, how did you cut the bumper? What did you cut it with? Well, I just used my angle grinder with a cutoff wheel. And then I also used some blue masking tape to make a line for when I made the cut across there. Same with the back, because you can adjust basically where your tape is sitting and cut like that. The only downside to using a cutoff wheel on a Dremel or a grinder like this on plastic is it's going to heat it up and melt it as you cut it. So what you have to do is you got to be really careful not to get that stuff on you because it burns. But basically after you made the cut, you're going to have to just chip that old plastic off and just use a little piece of sandpaper to clean it up, and then you can finish it off with the trim. It makes it a little bit easier than trying to use a knife or something like that. This plastic isn't hard to cut, but it's still, I think it'd be a little heavy to use a X-Acto knife or a utility blade or something like that. Plus, you're not trying to force a straight line. You can just make the cut. Cleaning it up isn't terrible. It just, like I said, be careful of getting that burning plastic on you. It will hurt for sure. And to finalize what I did with the felt, is you got to be careful on keeping mounting points. So I kept the lower one that goes on here, and I kept this one. Right now I've got some a zip tie in here because I ran out of little plastic rivets, which I buy at Harbor Freight. Their little plastic rivet gun works really good versus the OEM one that's a little more expensive. But I ran out of little plastic rivets because I take this thing apart so much. But basically you want to try and leave, if you're going to cut this felt and cut your bumper like I did, try and leave the point that's right after the little bolt, and that'll give you enough points to hold it on. So you're going to make a nice curve. And I also cut that with the grinder. Actually, I cut that with the Dremel tool. I was able to get a little bit better curve with the Dremel tool than I was with the grinder. So just remember, once you remove the lower valance and you cut this, you're going to have a little bit more stuff exposed. I've never had an issue. As you can tell, I have taken my train horns off. They need retuned, so I will be running with no train horns for a little while. Hopefully that answers all your questions about some of my most popular mods on the Jeep. If you have any more questions that I didn't answer, just leave me a comment down below and I will be sure to get back with you on with an answer. So if you haven't already, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will catch you guys in the next video.